have been able over the 30 years to lift millions of people out of absolute poverty.
Hello, folks. President Ramaphosa of South Africa recently spoke to his political party, the African National Congress, about progress made in South Africa, specifically about lifting people out of poverty. That's a debatable statistic. While many people have been lifted out of poverty, many more have been shoved into abject poverty. The actual numbers of people living in poverty are higher today than they were in 1994, an easily proven fact. But let's listen into what Ramaphosa has to say about housing. The ANC came to power in 1994, promising to build 1 million homes in 5 years for those who are unhoused. Now, they didn't achieve that goal, but they eventually got to those numbers. But listen to what he says about housing in South Africa and what the ANC has done for South Africans.
We've given houses to people, and I said yes. And I said, if you were to value the houses that we're giving to our people today, that we've built for 160,000, obviously others we built much cheaper earlier. It means that we are giving them an asset base which is worth easily, in today's market prices, more than 300,000. Now, I often go around our continent and other countries and I ask, what is your housing program look like? Many countries, they say, people have to pay for houses in one way or another. And I said, do you give free houses? They said, only exceptionally. We are amongst the very few countries in the world that gives such assets to our people.
Notice how Cyril says, we've given people houses. You haven't given anybody anything. Did you pay for them? No. Bondholders who loaned you money, the World Bank, the IMF, and taxpayers in South Africa, they're the ones that gave houses to the poor. And who are these poor? Was the beneficiary base equal across all races and ethnicities, or was it exclusively one group? Interesting questions. But interesting how he talks about here in this conversation, in his speech, where he says that we've given them an asset that today is worth 300,000 Rand, except that's balderdash. That's pure poppycock. They don't own the houses. The government refuses to turn over the title deed to the occupants. People have been trying to transfer a title deed for 20 or 30 years or more, trying to get access to own those assets. Try to go to bank and present collateral for a house that you don't own. You're basically a renter who's paying nothing. So these people live in these houses, the RDP houses, Reconstruction Development Program houses that were built by the government with taxpayer money, but the ANC takes credit for it when it's the taxpayer who funded it. The ANC and Ramaphosa want to pretend that they've given these assets to these people, but they haven't given them anything. They don't own clear title. They can't pledge their house for money from a bank to start a tuck shop or a spaza or start a business or delivery service. They can't do that. This is a joke. He's misleading people. We are amongst the few, very few countries in the world that give such assets to our people. But that's a lie. You're not giving anybody anything. You retain title deed to keep people dependent on the state, and by extension on the African National Congress. If you cared about the people, if you cared about giving things to people, after you've pilfered it from those who pay taxes, you haven't given anything, the taxpayers have and the bondholders. But if you want to rise people out of poverty, then transfer the title deed. You have billions and tens of billions of dollars of dead capital sitting there. Why? Because the state controls it. The occupants don't own the houses or the land. They can't go to a bank and borrow money. So why not transfer the title deed to them and make them wealthy? Give them an asset, those who occupy the houses you've built. Why not? Because that would make them less dependent on the state. If they're less dependent on the state, then they're less likely to vote for the ANC. That's the bottom line with this story. You haven't given anything. So we've gone to other countries and asked them, do you provide housing? And they don't. That's because it's not a moral obligation. He references the Freedom Charter in part of his speech on this date, and he tries to pretend the Freedom Charter meant that everyone's supposed to have a chicken in their pot and a free house. That's not what the Freedom Charter says. That is not what the Freedom Charter says. This is a distortion of history, thinking most of us are too stupid to know what's going on, but we're not. Some of us were there. I wasn't there at the Freedom Charter. It was before my time, slightly. But some of us have lived through this history. And we know that this man is misleading the public and his party. And they're drinking it like it's Guyana grape Kool-Aid. You haven't given anybody anything. And chastising or complaining about other countries not giving housing, that's not the role of the government. The government's role is not to provide housing. The government's role is to ensure a safe place for people. and a marketplace that functions. And stealing from one group of people to enrich another group of people, but then retaining title is morally bankrupt. Contrary to Sir Ramaphosa's bold declaration here that you've given someone 300,000 Rand of an asset, that's simply a lie. A lie. Folks, these people have been getting away with this for years, whether they're politicians in America, Europe, or in South Africa. They lie to the public, they mislead them, and misrepresent the facts. They haven't given anybody anything. They retain possession, and as a consequence, because the state owns the property, the land, the house, it's dead capital. No one can use it to borrow money. Dead capital. And that's a major problem in South Africa, dead capital. What say you, South Africa? Mzansi. Cheers.